Alright everyone, welcome to the channel. Last video of the day, let's talk about in both the macro term and the micro term what is going on with Bitcoin and the general markets that may affect Bitcoin. First of all, let's jump into the macro term. Well, not much is updated on this chart. I still do think it is very likely that we could move down to 29,000. And I've been saying this in all of my altcoin videos. My money is where my mouth is. This is not the range I believe you should be buying altcoins in. I don't give financial advice. This is my trading plan. I am buying Bitcoin in these regions. Until we break above 34,000, I would not expect altcoins to be bullish. I would not expect Bitcoin to be overly bullish. And until we break 34,000, my price target at 29 is completely unchanged. We have had, those weekly closes a couple of days ago. So we now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 red weekly candles in a row. Obviously this one could reverse whenever it wants and then become bullish, and then it would only be 6 bearish candles in a row. But bear in mind, look at this weekly volume. I mean, this is the 9th of May. We're only at Tuesday and we've got tons of selling volume coming into the markets. I wouldn't be terrified. I'm really very comfortable in my Bitcoin position. I'm just exaggerating, but if we did see another very big volume candle, especially coming into this week after everything we've seen, I would be very cautious about, like I said, trading Bitcoin. Now on this chart, I'm not going to talk about the extended cycle theory like we did in the previous video. If you want to check out the fact that the extended cycle theory has been invalidated, then feel free to go out and go and check my channel on the data that I previously provided. But you can see we've got these mega trend lines on Bitcoin, and normally when we come back to them, when we come back to the bottom of these trend lines, we extrapolate them from previous all-time high to as many touch points as you can get. And every single time, we come back into these, it is basically the bear market confirmed, and we chop to the side for a very long period of time. So I almost would not be super surprised if Bitcoin kind of just chops around like this for the next year or so, and then maybe that would put Bitcoin at much higher price targets. This is leading it all into 2025. I'm really just drawing like a line of best fit to kind of describe what I think is happening. I don't think we're going to go off into 2025 trending sideways. That's just my opinion. But you can see this mega trend line on the weekly, or should I say rather coming over to the daily. We're trying to hold it. We're really trying to hold it. This is a big macro level. While we're below it at this moment in time, I think because it's such a big trend line in a big macro range, I think we're kind of just sitting on it right now, waiting to make a decision. That is pretty much the macro charts. Also, the Bitcoin logarithmic growth curves, I told you I'd update you on these. We did break below 1 deviation oversold. This is, once again, I'd say scary, but I'm just exaggerating because I'm very comfortable in the Bitcoin position I'm in. But the only other time we've done this, we had a very quick capitulation event, which took us down, a very decent amount. I'm not the greatest on maths at the top of my head, but this was what, like a 25% drop or something, from 7,500 to 5,000. Like I said, so if you were at 10,000, 25% drop would be down to 7,000. So it must be like 20, 25, something like that. I'm going off on a tangent, but nonetheless, the only time we've done this, we did have a tiny bit more capitulation to go down to, which in my opinion, could correlate to what we're seeing in this chart, where we could potentially come down to 29,000 for that mass capitulation before we do have that big wick that's been bought up. Previously, every time we have a bottom, you can see big wick bought up, big wick bought up. We're not seeing that, at least at this moment in time. Bear in mind, we're still only 2 days into the week, so I wouldn't expect the greatest of a pump to happen. Let's talk about the lower time frames for Bitcoin. Let's start off on the daily. Well, we've still got the huge bearish engulfing candle from yesterday. We're putting in a fairly decent amount of buying volume today, but the buying volume is nothing compared to what we saw yesterday. This was very extraordinary. This is one of the most dumpiest days we've ever seen on Bitcoin. And I also made a video on Bitcoin this morning talking about what happens when we have these huge capitulation wicks, and normally it means we at least have a dead cat bounce before we roll over. I think we're in a scenario like this where we've come down, we've filled the first low. I think we're gearing up for that big move, maybe a 20, 30, 40% move to the upside before we do come back down, double bottom, dead cat bounce, triple bottom, and then the next cycle can begin. I really don't think we're going to enter like a huge bull run just off the bat of this. That's just my opinion. I'm still super bullish on Bitcoin in the long term. I think Bitcoin's going to hundreds of millions of dollars, and I believe Bitcoin's going to hundreds of millions of dollars because I believe that in the future, you know, like a halloumi sandwich in the US is going to cost like $10,000. I think the dollar's going to be like worthless in the next 100 years or so. Most of us won't be around. Well, I'd hope none of us are around for the next 100 years actually. But yeah, nonetheless, I think the more and more the dollar gets devalued, the more millions and millions Bitcoin is going to be trading at. You can see we've had a very lackluster bounce. I talked about, you know, the fact that, you know, at least this morning we were having like a mini V-shaped recovery, and we've already lost the momentum. It only took 8 hours of bullish momentum to completely, you know, capitulate on the volume that we've made. And there's a few different ways you can talk about this. You could argue, you know, we're in a bull flag, and, you know, this is also valid, but you come over to the lower time frames, come over to the 1 hour, and you can see, very interestingly, I haven't seen many of these back to back like this. We had an inverse head and shoulders. The price target didn't get hit. I extrapolated it earlier. Not that it really matters because it'd literally be like a couple of $1,000 move. But we had a inverse head and shoulders move, and then you can see in the same wick we moved up and formed the shoulder of the next head and shoulders. So this is very comical. We've literally got an inverse head and shoulders pumping into a head and shoulders that could be breaking down, because on the hourly we've already got rejected from these hourly EMA ribbons. On the 4 hour you're miles and miles away from your 4 hourly EMA ribbons. So while we have had, you know, a slight relief rally today, this is not the continuation pump that I wanted to see coming into the market. I really wanted to see a little bit more oomph, a little bit more kick, a little bit more of the bulls, you know, screaming and fighting. I wanted to see, you know, the markets, people being bullish, people jumping back in bullish. And I guess it can sometimes have the inverse effect, because the more people are bearish, then I guess, at least in my opinion, the closer to the bottom we are. The last time we checked out fear and greed, it was actually coming in at 10. So I'll give this a quick update as well, just because I think it's important to know where we're sitting on fear and greed. This is a great website, by the way. Look into Bitcoin. It's got a plethora of good charts, good data, on-chain metrics. Yeah, updated most recently, we're coming in at 10. And I talked about this, all the bottoms you can see here, or at least the most recent bottoms. You got a bottom down here at 9, and we had a bottom down here at 10. If it can show up, it's somewhere around here. There you go, 10, 3,300. We recently bottomed down there. We recently bottomed here at 9, and, you know, here we bottomed at 19. This was less of a macro drop, but still, we're putting in 10 right now on the fear and greed index. People are terrified of what we're seeing in the markets. Not surprisingly. I mean, I don't want to act like I'm a OG, but I am a seasoned veteran to these markets, and depending on what you constitute a bear market, I've seen at least 2 of them. I don't think anyone can call this a bear market, so I wouldn't call this a bear market, but what we're experiencing right now, I would call a bear market. So I've lived through 2 bear markets now. I've lived through a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt and capitulation events. I was here during the pandemic when all the fear, uncertainty, and doubt completely took over the market. And in my opinion, this is what we're seeing now. We're really seeing these black swan events. Obviously, it's slightly different. We're seeing, you know, some political things around the world that I don't really want to comment on, because I don't think I don't really want to comment on them, because I feel like, you know, channels that talk about these political things, blah blah blah, may not, you know, make it in the long term. They may just disappear because YouTube doesn't like what they're talking about. So I'm not going to bring politics into this. Nonetheless, it's not looking the greatest right now. You can see inverse head and shoulders, breakout, failed move, got rejected off the EMA ribbons, and we're now breaking down into this head and shoulders pattern. I'm going to finish this video just quickly microdosing what's going on in the dollar, because it's very worrying what we're seeing on this, because the dollar is showing extreme strength. Sorry, I clicked on the wrong chart, I think. But the dollar, this was only yesterday. Yeah, it was only yesterday the dollar came up and made a new, I'm going to call this an all-time high. Technically, it's a local high. The previous all-time high on the dollar, I can't remember when it was, but it was miles and miles and miles in that direction. And by miles, I mean years and years and years and years. We haven't had a new all-time high on the dollar for, it's been more than 5 years. I think it's been like 10 years or something. I don't know the exact time. I'm not going to waste your time going back to it because it's not that important, but nonetheless, let's just make it simple and call this the all-time high. We are coming back above the all-time high, and on the daily time frame you can see, or if I show you on the 4-hour, we've really been accumulating to the upside in these EMA ribbons, and we're breaking very, very bullish. It seems like every day higher lows, higher lows, higher lows, and this entire rally is supported by these EMA ribbons. So the dollar is very strong right now, or I take that back, the dollar is extremely weak. The DXY is showing extreme strength. The DXY is simply the dollar measured against a basket of other a basket of other fiat currencies, and then you've got things like the Canadian currency, the I can't remember what it's called, the Zimbabwean dollar, you've got, you know, the Turkish lira, you've got all of these, you know, terrible fiat currencies that are performing horribly, and the dollar is just looking good because it's performing better than other terrible fiat currencies. So the dollar, at least, the dollar breaking up, the DXY breaking up is terrible for the stock market. Don't get me wrong, like the dollar may be weak, but the DXY breaking out is very, very terrifying. So we are looking like we want to push above this level. I will update you on this tomorrow. I think a big move is coming, but the stock market's being battered again, and this worries me because Bitcoin did really not get battered today, but the stock market led the rally. You've got, you know, Coinbase down 13% again, Facebook down, you know, a tiny bit. I mean, it's technically slightly up, but that's just because we opened slightly higher than yesterday. Everything is down. Tesla once again putting in these dumpy days, only red volume. Google once again another red day. It opened slightly higher, but it is coming down. The SPY made a new low today. It is breaking down like a rock. The Nasdaq's kind of just hovering around where it was yesterday. SPX broke down to new lows as well today. Apple, I think we just covered Apple. Apple looks moderately okay, but it's only because it opened higher and it's breaking down. Netflix looks bad, but it's really hovering around the lows of yesterday. So I mean, depending on if you wanted to draw from here, the previous low, you can see we broke down yesterday and we're back testing that again today. Microsoft once again opened higher but is coming down. And gold doesn't have too much of a profound impact of what Bitcoin is doing. I think gold can really do its own thing and no one will really care. I think a lot of the interest is just kind of leaving gold because, you know, all the dinosaurs in gold, they're not fans of Bitcoin anyway. They don't really keep an eye on these charts, but nonetheless, stock market is leading the rally to the downside. Look at this bearish volume we've got coming in to the Coinbase earnings report. So I'd be very, very cautious about trading altcoins. I'd be very cautious about trading cryptos. Bitcoin looks like it wants to head down. Be very, very cautious. In my opinion, I think Bitcoin is coming down to 29,000. And that's really all I've got for you today. I think it's very simple. Until Bitcoin breaks above 34,000, has a solid rally, I will have to expect 29,000 is in play. I really do hope we bottom at 29. If we do break below 29, it could get a lot uglier because we don't have any data traded between then and the previous all-time high. So I'm going to wrap up this video at this moment in time. It does look like we want to head down. In my opinion, 29,000 is on the table. Would I be shorting this? Absolutely not. Would I be buying at 30,000 and 29,000 on spot? 100%. That is my trading plan. My only trading plan right now is to leave the altcoins alone, leave the leverage trading alone, and simply buy spot Bitcoin at these beautifully undervalued prices, in my opinion. So looks like we want to break down from the head and shoulders. Dollars looking extremely strong, stock market breaking down, not looking good. Best of luck to all of you as always. Hope you found value in this content. Cowboy out. Not financial advice, most importantly. Peace.